Hey, good morning. It is exactly 10:44 a.m. on Monday, July 19th, 2021, and today is an anniversary. It is an anniversary of the day before I submitted a petition, a motion for a petition to the Supreme Court in Texas, or rather the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. And it's also a day where, unfortunately, I ended up also having to file a police report in Houston. The details of that are in one of the motions, but I'm bringing this up because something happened that day that has had profound effect since the day that the day after July 20th. There was a public announcement, and it alleged that somebody had been hacked. And I have felt for quite a while that they didn't actually get hacked, that there was something else that happened. And I'm not going to go into that too much today, but I want to talk about the FBI. And specifically, I want to talk about visits to offices of the FBI. Now, this is a provocative subject, but I say this because in my original petition for a writ of habeas corpus, I say this. Number 56 under Statement of Facts. Kraus did not go to the FBI office as she suspected that she was being used to assist with a financial transaction related to funding the FBI's proposed database for a Muslim registry. Krause's father had also informed her that he was awaiting congressional appropriations to fund a contract with the FBI for his temporary employment. Dot dot dot. Discussed this with her father on the telephone in front of. Dot dot dot. Kraus did not want to be party to a conflict of interest or participate in any sort of funding scheme involving the FBI. So it's kind of like one of those things where a local guy who has some past experience with the DOJ has offered you a job and you're on the phone with your dad. Yeah, right? And your dad's like, yeah, well, I mean, I'm waiting on this contract, but they got to pass approve the funding. If they approve the funding, I'll get this contract. And the guy you're in the room with, he overhears the phone call. And then within a very specific and strategic period of time, after you've asked him for a lawyer or a contact with a lawyer, he tells you to go to the FBI. Well, then you have a different understanding. You're like, well, wait a second. Is this about me getting legal assistance with what I need? Or is this about you trying to do something because you know my dad's looking for a contract? And you also know my dad's looking for a contract and you got, ends, right? It could make it a bit awkward when you actually have a very serious law enforcement matter you need to deal with. But all of that, the actual work that they do, is subsidiary to somebody's interest and being able to leverage that information to hook up a contract for themselves. I mean, does it make a difference if it's your dad? Let me ask you a question. Does it make a difference if it's Halliburton? I don't know. Does it make a difference if it is Memorial Herman? Right? Because, in the specific concerns I have with the kind of database management paradigms that the FBI specifically is engaged in, including engaged in manners that were a part of cases that went before the Supreme Court of the United States. These are very real concerns. So if sometime later, after that particular round of appropriations considerations ends up not being so important at the time, it kind of gets put on the back burner, or appropriations get approved, things move on, that conflict of interest isn't there. Well, you have need to go and talk to the FBI about something else, and you show up on site. Well, because you have to. You got to report. You got to actually turn it in. You got to go. You got to get them to acknowledge you. You got to get them to acknowledge you've turned the report in. They log it in as evidence. They let you know about, what you can do if you need a contact moving forward because you have more information. But what happens if that's not what happens, right? What happens if that's not what happens because they weren't just using you to hook up a contract for your dad? They sent you down there that day in order to what? Be the surrogate to hook up contracts for a bunch of other people's dads, right? Now, see, the thing is, I'm an adult. And that day, there were a lot of not adults on site, right? So here's the thing. I thought at various points in time that I had not only a need, but a duty, and also that it was imperative to be acknowledged as having made official efforts to get evidence logged in with the actual Federal Bureau of Investigation. But years later, we're in a very serious situation because of that whole take your daughter to work. And I'm not talking about with the FBI, right? And it's what we're dealing with right now. So I'm going to let you know something. If you were in a situation and you were one of those like super sleuths, or you were somebody that had a mind for discernment, and you understood that a chain of evidence and making sure to establish timelines in order to identify your cognizance that you may be in a situation where somebody is trying to coerce you into agreeing to cooperate with crime, then necessitates you engaging with law enforcement, even if law enforcement absolutely 100% tries to set you up or blows it, that's not your fault, right? Because they also get appropriations. And in order to get them, it has to be congressionally approved, right? So when they do things like refuse to do apply internal controls, you know what that means? They're messing with appropriations for internal controls, right? You know, like Office of Professional Standards, like Internal Affairs, like Office of the Prosecutor, like Inspector General, like audits, including if there are third party audits. And see, that one fraud can become a manifold fraud. And then, you know, a couple years down the road, we got a problem that you can't blame merely on the media or representatives of the media, right? Hey, how's it going today? Your heart okay? Take a breath. Take a breath. Was that a threat? Nah, you weren't threatening me.